But let's go through them because I think it's important for someone buying a business to know what category they fall into. What do you mean by a synergistic or a strategic buyer?
Well, and in many cases, someone will fall into more than one category.
Okay.
So a synergistic or a strategic buyer, they're saying, well, with what I already have and what I buy, I can make a better business on this. And a lot of the mergers that we read about in the newspapers are strategic buyers, where they want to buy something and move and take advantage of economies of scale and be able to cross sell each other's products, whether it be the mergers of the various railroads, or when Google has a new acquisition or Microsoft has a new acquisition. Those are some examples of synergistic buyers.
Focused or cherry pickers?
They're looking to buy a business for just one particular aspect of the business, and they may be willing to sell off or just they really don't want the other aspects of the business. So they just want a particular, maybe a piece of intellectual property that they have, or a particular customer base, or a particular product that they want to sell.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And sometimes, I mean, I just had a client that sold their business to a company that only wanted a certain product line of their business, and they had four other product lines, and the buyer actually closed down the other four product lines just to keep the one product line that they knew that they were really after. What about a financial buyer?
Financial buyers just look, in many cases, they're looking for a cash on cash return, a return on investment, return on equity. And a lot of times, you may associate them with private equity firms. But in most cases, someone who's a financial buyer also wants to bring in some synergy to the transaction. So you're going to see both in many cases.
Yeah, I got to imagine, like, any buyer is a financial buyer for the most part. I mean, if they're buying it for a strategic reason or a synergistic reason, they've got some return on investment on their minds. But so it's almost an overlap probably with a lot of the other categories.
Yeah, and you'll see that as well.
Yep. Extreme bargain hunters. I think I know what that is.
Well, those are people who are looking to buy a business for pennies on the dollar. The business hasn't. And in many cases, you'll see that in closely held businesses where the owner is encountering health issues, or the owner dies, or they lose a major customer. But in some cases, a business that loses its founder does very well. I mean, think about what happened with Apple after Steve Jobs died. They still have done very well in the last 11 years since he passed away.
Yeah, that makes sense. And finally, there are the romantics.
And I think in many cases, everybody is a bit of a romantic buyer whenever they buy a business. But what comes to mind for romantic buyers, someone who wants to buy a business that is in an area where they have a hobby. For example, they have a surfer, or they want to buy a sports team, or they want to buy a business in a particular geography or a particular climate just to be there.
Do you find any one of these categories of buyers to be more successful than the other?
Well, in some cases, romantic buyers are less successful,
right?
Because it may just be an outgrowth of their hobby on this. But I think like the strategic buyers, as well as the focus or the cherry pickers, are generally going to be more successful. The financial buyers, and keep in mind that the financial buyers are based on models that they put together. And 3 years ago, who would have predicted that we would have had a pandemic that we had? I don't think any of us would have predicted the ramifications or the extent of this.
Do you think it's important if I'm looking to buy a business, Bob, should I take the time out to better understand what kind of category or categories of a buyer that I am? Does that help me in the buying process?
It may help you a little, because in some cases, people overpay if they're a romantic buyer. They always wanted to own a ski shop. They always wanted to own a model train store or something like that. And they may not be looking at the financial rewards, and with the understanding that business has rewards that are beyond financial in many cases.